I'm Maria Marchese with ASA, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. It's time to rethink your onboarding process. Please note that this one-hour webinar is being recorded for replay. Everyone registered for the webinar will receive a follow-up email message with notification as to when the replay is available, as well as the instructions on how to access the video and the presentation slides. We've allotted 45 minutes for today's presentation, so we have time for questions along with it. Please know that questions are encouraged during the program. The go-to webinar control panel includes window panes in which you may pose questions and even chat with other participants through the use of your computer's keyboard. If needed, you can minimize and maximize the go-to webinar control panel by clicking on the orange arrow in the upper left-hand corner. Now I'd like to recognize our 2017 supplier partners who are truly dedicated to the positive development of the PHCP and industrial mechanical PVF industry through ASA. When making key decisions in your business, please consider these corporate partners that go above and beyond with their support to advance ASA's efforts, programs, and services through advocacy, education, networking, and benchmarking. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today, Doug Dillon and Amber Augie. Doug is the Director of Professional Development for ASA Education Foundation. His responsibilities include elevating the people development capabilities of ASA member organizations and driving performance management, leadership development, and learning management. He has served as Director, Talent Management for First Supply, a Midwest-based plumbing, heating, and industrial PVF distributor. Prior to that, Doug was Director of Global Sales, Learning, and Development for the Kohler Company, a global plumbing manufacturing organization where he served for nearly 10 years. Among his credentials, Doug is a Master Certified Facilitator for an industry-leading leadership curriculum and holds certifications in more than a dozen additional curricula. He has spoken at the international conventions for ATD and ISPI. Amber is an education coordinator for the American Supply Association Education Foundation. In Amber's role, she heads the Master of Distribution Management program, which provides leadership and management training to develop the industry's top talent. She actively works with members to customize training to fit their needs and is an essential part of the advisory service team. Doug and Amber will be tag teaming the presentation, and Doug will start off for us. So Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Maria. I appreciate the invitation to be with our HR and training peer networking council that we have at ASA. This particular organization is one that's true to our heart, as Amber and I are working with the Advocacy Council to be able to drive learning and development within ASA University throughout all of our members, so we're pleased to be here. And certainly onboarding is one of the topics that are quite close to our heart. The agenda for today is I'm going to walk through a little bit about what onboarding is, and then I'm going to hand off to Amber, and she's going to walk through some of the resources and tools that ASA University has for each of our members and give you an opportunity to see where you can go to jumpstart and get some new ideas for your onboarding program. So as we start, it's important to define what it is that we're talking about when we say onboarding. And onboarding is simply a planful approach for integrating new employees into an organization. Now, when we talk about an integration piece, it's important to note that we start with the word planful. And an onboarding thing, an onboarding tool is something that takes a lot of effort to be able to plan for. We need to be able to make sure that those first couple of days, and in some cases some of our members are planning several weeks in advance, and even one or two that I know of that are planning several months in advance for this person, and scheduling activities and making sure that the person understands what's happening. When we do onboarding, it's important to know that we teach them the things that they need to do to reduce their time to competence in a job. We want them to be as productive and performing as we possibly can make them, as quickly as we possibly can make them. And it takes a little bit of planning to be able to do that. So that's what we mean when we say a planful approach to our onboarding process in getting people the ability to get up to speed as quickly as we possibly can. Is equally important as understanding what onboarding is, it's also important to maybe understand what it is not. And unfortunately, ASA has seen a number of things that have happened in some of our industry partners, and it's important to know what it is not. So what onboarding is not is something like this, where a manager comes along or an HR person says, yeah, we got a new person starting, can you show them the ropes? Okay, that's not planful. That's not doing it. But unfortunately, if we're really honest with ourselves, sometimes that happens in the plumbing, HVAC, and industrial PVF distribution industry. We've seen it happen before, and even under the best of intentions to be able to do that, sometimes that's what onboarding is for our people. But it's not what we want it to be. It's not the planful approach. Here's another thing for what onboarding is not. Now, you'll be sitting right here as soon as we get someone to clean up this space, or I understand this a little dirty, or we're going to get that laptop for you, or you know, we haven't put the phone here yet, but once we do, this is where you're going to be setting. Okay, that's not a planful approach either. We want to make sure that the workspace is appropriate, is available, is ready for that person once they start. That's what the planful approach is. It's also not, well, why don't you go ahead and start unloading that pallet until someone from corporate shows up and then we'll walk you through your paperwork. Again, we've seen this happen, and I'll bet that some of you have seen this as well. You know, it's corporate's responsibility, or it's the HR person's responsibility to do 100% of the onboarding, right? I mean, that's what their role is. That is not what we're talking about as onboarding, even though that might be the perception of some of us and some of the managers in our business. So we need to make sure that we're educating our people on what good, true onboarding is and what it isn't. That's where we want to get to. So we need to make sure that we convince people why we should be doing it in the first place, because there are a number of different advantages that onboarding has for people. So first of all, we're all discovering that turnover is increasing, the economy is improving slightly, and certain areas are coming along faster than others. But finding new talent is more difficult. I'll bet most people on the call today can attest to the fact that finding really good people is really, really tough these days. The last thing that we want to do is, once we found that gem, is to disenfranchise that person on day one, or give that person the impression that we weren't really ready for them, or we don't really have a plan for getting them up to speed, or we don't really want to incorporate them into the culture and let them feel welcome. So we can do those. That's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy part. Let's not thwart our efforts in the talent selection piece that is more and more difficult. So we can really help with that with onboarding. In addition, there's no longer a time gap between hiring and developing someone. It's interesting, the millennials that have been interviewed that have just joined the workforce really say that day one, the minute that they're hired, they're looking for what that new employer is going to do to help to develop them. Okay? There isn't a honeymoon phase anymore. Well, you know what, let's bring that person on and we can really focus on developing them and getting them up to speed in a couple of months, or maybe even a year or so. Then we'll talk to them about what their development plan or the training that they can take. They'll just kind of learn it along on the ropes. Yet a good onboarding process can help with that, and it can keep those people as engaged from when they said yes to your employment offer and keep that positivity going. That's what a great onboarding program can do. It is absolutely critical to get employees up to speed as quickly as possible. We need them to be a positive contribution to our teams as quickly as possible. Many of us, if we have openings, maybe that opening has been there for quite a while and we really desperately need some help at the different roles. Maybe it's a counter guy that everyone else has been kind of trying to pitch in to be able to make up for time. We get that person on board. We've got to make sure that we have a plan for getting them the necessary skills on the computer, on the inventory, on the quoting systems to be able to let them take some of the burden from the other people. So we've got to get them up to speed quickly. A great onboarding program can do that for them. And obviously, training, expectation setting, and cultural integration isn't just from one person. It's not just from the HR person. It's not just from the hiring manager. It comes from multiple sources. And if we have all of those sources together, if they're all focused on the one goal, if they know what everyone else is doing, then that concerted effort can be a lot more effective. And that's what we want to do. We want to have the mentor and the manager and the team and the HR department and all of the other people that are going to be involved with welcoming that person understand what their roles are within the onboarding process, and that it really is a team effort. What do they say about it takes a village to raise a child? It takes a village to adequately onboard someone, especially with the cultural nuances that are important. There are many different benefits to making sure that our onboarding process is right. We want to be able to decrease that ramp-up time for them to become productive. We want to extend that excitement. You know what it's like when you go out and you make a new purchase. Maybe you're buying a new car or you're purchasing a new pair of shoes and you have that high. You have that wow factor. It's no different when an employee says yes to your offer and they're excited about joining a new organization. But if they join that new organization and, okay, here you go, there's your job, ready, set, go, that excitement can go down very, very quickly. And so we want to make sure that we leverage that, and a great onboarding process can do that. In addition, we know as we're hiring people, we can set all the expectations in the world, but it really continues that when you're in the onboarding process and you start the job. Yes, I know what the job description says, but if I'm talking to a peer or I'm having conversations with my manager when I'm actually doing some of the tasks that are required, those expectation settings become solidified. And that is so important to be able to do. So we need everyone when we're making that happen to understand that they are helping to shape those expectations for the employee when it comes to performance on the job. And ultimately, we want to provide a positive impression that they are welcome, that we are glad that they're there, that we have anticipated them coming on, and we have made some preparation. When someone knows that you have done that, there is a great appreciation. If my wife and I go to a friend's house and a couple friend of ours and they make dinner for us, there is a special connection there because we know that they have prepared. They have gone to the grocery store, they've planned out a great meal, they've purchased all of the groceries for that meal, they've spent time preparing and cooking and baking and all of the things that are around that, and there is an appreciation that goes for that. Just like setting the table for someone when they come on board, if they know that their area is ready for them, the laptop is there, the phone number is established, the business cards are ready for them, the manager knows that they're coming, the mentor is set up and ready to show them the ropes in the warehouse. Those are the types of things that we want to be able to have as a part of the onboarding program. And it takes time and it takes practice. So underneath the umbrella of talent management, there are different aspects of it, and we've shared some of these before in other webinars and in other discussions. There's certainly hiring within the talent management umbrella. There's training of our people. There's succession planning, retaining. There's compensating. There's evaluating. There's all kinds of other things. There's assessments, and there's workforce planning, and there's all of the different pieces under talent management. And it's important to understand how onboarding can be interwoven in many of these different pieces. So obviously, starting with hiring and into training, we've hired the person. If we build a great onboarding process, then it naturally dovetails into the training. So we know these are the different computer systems and processes within the ERP that we need to let that person understand. We need to share it with them, and we need to give them time to get up to speed on that. They need to understand the products. They need to understand the processes. If they're a counter person, that this is how I create an order. This is how I look up inventory. This is how I do a return. Those types of things, it's a natural extension after the hiring into the training that should be incorporated into the onboarding process. A successful onboarding experience can effectively transition a person from hiring to training. The next piece is in the retaining of the person. So we all know that we don't want to train our people and then have them leave the organization. That's like the worst possible scenario because of the effort that we expended in identifying them and bringing them on board and getting them up to speed and training. When they leave, it's a downer. So we need the onboarding process to begin the retainment piece as well. And we can certainly do that by showing that we're investing in our person. If when that person starts, we hand them a schedule that shows all of the different things that we are going to be investing in them. It's not hodgepodge. It's not, well, you know, go be with Larry for a couple of hours today, and then we'll go on and look for something else. If it's planful and if it's out there, that person will then know that you are really engaged with them and you are attempting to get them up to speed, give them the tools necessary, and increase their engagement. Obviously, when we begin the retaining piece, it shows that company's commitment to the employee and gives them a greater appreciation for their job. Be planful about it. Obviously, the evaluation process, it's important to talk to as well. Now, most companies will do some sort of a 30, 60, 90-day preliminary performance management discussion with a new hire to make sure that the expectations are set and that they're being met. It's critical in the onboarding process to talk about the evaluation process, to let them know that we're going to take an opportunity in these first 90 days. You get to evaluate us, we get to evaluate you to see how much initiative you're taking, how far along the process you are coming, how quickly you're able to assimilate the tasks and the knowledge that's required on the job. And so we need to involve that. If we're not talking evaluation in the onboarding process, we're missing out, because it gives that person an ability to see how you can value them and how they can value the company. Obviously, if you are incorporating a mentoring process or a shadowing assignment, this too can be a great opportunity that you can talk to some of the people that are mentoring them and shadowing them and getting some feedback on how quickly the person is picking up on different things. So you make sure that when you're building that onboarding process or you're upticking your own existing process, that you include some evaluation processes as well. The last piece is succession planning. Now, most people don't think about succession planning being a part of the onboarding process, but I'll give you a hint. This is a critical piece that you should think through. Long-term potential can absolutely be assessed through performance in an onboarding process. If you can see that the individual is picking up on things, or if you can see and sense a little bit more aptitude from the person being able to move into this area or that area, it's great to know that in advance. So make sure that if you're training people to onboard other people, because again, it's not just one person, make sure that you're looking at succession planning and assigning levels of potential that, you know what, we've hired this person. I really think this person has the ability to move from driver to the counter in a short period of time because they're picking things up. That's important to be able to document and assess throughout the onboarding process. So there are a lot of different things under the talent management umbrella that you can weave into the onboarding process. So now it's time to kind of shift into some best practices. I've done some outreach to different distribution members in plumbing, HVAC, and industrial PVF in our industry, and I've asked them to share some best practices and things that they're doing in their own onboarding process. Now, it's important to know that not everybody is perfect, and not every one of these best practices are going to be applicable to all 32 of the people who are on this webinar right now. It could be that some of these would be great ideas for you, and some that won't so much be as much of a fit for you, and that's okay. So take them for what they're worth. They are good onboarding practices. I've grouped them into different categories, and we'll take a look at the different pieces in the categories and what different people are doing. So the first category I'm going to call set the table. And it's really, really important to make sure that you're preparing. So one distributor makes sure that they assign it to one person, that they ensure that before that person is hired, they hire most people on a Monday. So on Friday afternoon, there's one person that is responsible to make sure that the workstation is clean, is ready, that there's a nice welcome sign that's there for that person. If the person is starting in the warehouse, they have a sign up in the bulletin board to make that person feel welcome. Similarly, another company chooses to do an email announcement. They send it to everybody in the company, not just at the branch, but everyone in all of the branches to recognize so-and-so is starting. These are some of the things that he or she likes to do in their spare time. This person came to us from this other organization, and his or her role is going to be, a picker in the warehouse. But they send an email announcement and talk a little bit about some of the personal things with the person. The other person takes a look at what their role is, what is needed, and what they're going to do with that new person before the start. So they have kind of a mini meeting with the different people that will be involved. So it'll include HR, it'll include the manager, it'll include a couple of people that are going to be shadowing that person, and kind of put everyone together and say, okay, on Monday morning we're going to have Joe Blow, he's going to be starting in this particular role, and everyone understands what it is that they're doing. So they set the table, they prepare, they do different things to make sure that that person knows that they've been expected and that they are welcome. So that's kind of the first piece on setting the table. Be ready on day one. Don't make it seem like, oh, well, we're not really prepared for you, or yeah, we wish we would have had more time, but we're just glad you're here, and go ahead and get started. Okay, that's the first best practice, set the table. The next best practice is paint the picture. So that's kind of my way of saying make sure that you're setting the right expectations. So in one area, one of our members takes the job description and they kind of cut it apart and they say, okay, Joe, when you were doing the shadowing with this person, why don't you make sure that you cover this bullet point, and this bullet point that are in the job description. Okay, then HR is going to cover this bullet point and this bullet point, which really talks about some of the cultural pieces and the responsibilities around filling out the time cards and those types of things. Then the manager is going to hit this bullet point and this bullet point and this bullet point from the job description. So they kind of chop it up a little bit, and they make that job description come to life, and they, for lack of a better word, they paint the picture for what those expectations are. Another company assigns a mentor to that new person for the job shadowing, and it's very, very structured. In fact, they took what Amber is going to share with you a little bit later in our webinar. They've taken the ASA piece and they've kind of cut it up so that everybody knows what the responsibilities are, that the new person knows, the shadower, the mentor knows, and the manager knows at any one given time. At day one in the morning, these are the things that are being covered. Day two in the afternoon, these things are being covered. So even the new person can raise their hand and say, we were supposed to cover the plumbing fixtures in this time period, and we must have missed that. I need to make sure that we do that. And the mentor can be held accountable to make sure that those things are covered. All three can hold each other accountable. The other thing is simply to build and communicate the plan. Be very structured with it. And as I said, Amber's going to share with you in a little bit some different pieces that ASA University has that you can jumpstart your program with. The next best practice is break bread. Something very similar, and that's the way that people can connect, is by sharing a meal. So one of our members says the hiring manager takes a new person to lunch on his or her first day. Doesn't have to be a big formal sit down. It could be a sandwich at Jimmy John's or whatever, but they take the person to lunch. They appreciate the fact that they're there. Another organization says at some point during the new hire's first week, they bring in pizzas in the break room to welcome them and has the new person be able to meet on a more of a social basis some of the people that they may not otherwise connect with in their job. So do something nice for them. The welcome sign is nice, just to make sure that they're there. Break bread with them, have some kind of a meal, or just show your appreciation by doing something nice. That's always important to do in the onboarding process. Next best practice, it's not just for breakfast anymore. Perhaps I'm dating myself a little bit. Those of you who are at least as old as I am remember the Florida orange juice commercials back in the 70s and 80s where they say, orange juice, it's not just for breakfast anymore. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means, but certainly mentoring for a new hire for a particular time period is a mandatory activity to be considered for a manager role. So what's not for breakfast anymore is succession planning. Succession planning and promotion and onboarding can be a process within that. So onboarding isn't just onboarding anymore. Use onboarding for other things. So you can say if you want to be a manager, you've got to be a new hire mentor. You've got to be a job shadower for new people in order for you to be considered for a manager role. One of our members chooses to do that. They also say we give larger raises to those who help get new hires up to speed the quickest. So they find a way to kind of measure that, and because Joe is in the warehouse and he's really good, he's been doing it for 15 years and he's awesome by putting a new hire with them, we know that that new hire is going to understand all that they need to know and is going to get up to speed. That adds value to the organization, and the organization can recognize that with additional raises. We have training for people who want to help new people become onboarded. This is critical because not everybody is going to be a good mentor. We know we all probably have some of those crotchety guys who have been here forever and they probably know everything, but you want your new hires to stay way away from those guys because they're not the best people, or they're not going to show them the best way to do things. So we need to make sure that we're training and identifying the best people that we can to be able to onboard our people. Our owner sends a personal note of congratulations and thank you to the mentors, and they send a note of congratulations to the new person once they come on board. That's always great. So use it to drive succession. Onboarding is not just for onboarding. Onboarding is not just for breakfast anymore. Onboarding can be used in succession planning for your existing people as well. Another best practice, who's on first, what's on second? You remember the Abbott and Costello piece. Again, I'm probably dating myself with this, but it really is used to set expectations. This particular member says, we modified the contract document from ASA so that the manager, the mentor, and the new hire all know what should be covered at each particular day. It's simply setting the expectations. If I'm the mentor that's bringing this new person on board and I need to make sure that I cover these 6 things with them in the time I have together, I'm held accountable to that because I sign a contract. There is a sample contract that you can download in the mentoring handbook from ASA that shows you the different things that could be covered. The mentor signs it, the new hire signs it, and the manager signs it. They all know who's on first, what's on second, and everybody knows what needs to happen with that. Drive accountability so that different people know what the expectations are of that. Last best practice, stop and smell the roses. When a new hire completes the onboarding process, his or her name appears on a congratulations section of our monthly employee newsletter. So we say, attaboy, Joe Blow started with us 3 months ago and has completed their onboarding process. Our company creates a certificate of accomplishment for the new person, and they can choose to display it in their area, on their desk, on the bulletin board in the break room, whatever they choose to do. And another member, we display all of the e-learning course completion certificates on a special wall. So if your onboarding process includes taking several different e-learning courses, you can have your people print out their certificates of completion and put them all up so that people can see, almost a badge of courage or a wall of courage, that you can see all of the accomplishments that people have. That's what Stop and Smell Roses means. Our owner sends the personal note of congratulations. Recognize and celebrate the different pieces of the onboarding process. Those are some of the industry best practices, and I would be remiss if I didn't give a quick thank you to all of the different members of the plumbing, HVAC, industrial PVF distribution industry that shared their best practices on onboarding with me to make this possible, so that all of the people on the webinar today could see some of them, and those that are viewing this in the recorded version can also take a look at some of the best practices, and hopefully this will be a running thing that we can continue to add to our best practice repository and share with other people. So those are some of the best practices. Some of them may be nuggets that you take with you. Some of them may not apply to you, or you may not think works in your curriculum. But I'd like to pass it now on to Amber, who's going to go through some of the resources that ASA University has available to members that can, in many cases, download, or in other cases, there are coursework that you can have access to. So I'm going to pass it along to Amber, and then we'll open it up at the end for some questions. Amber.
Thank you, Doug. So as Doug said, ASA University actually has a lot of the documents that Doug has been mentioning available to our members to use to, whether it's create, develop, or just update your onboarding process. So the very first thing that you have to do in order to get access to those is to sign in to ASA.net. All of the resources there are needed to be accessed by members only, and so it won't let you in until you sign in. So you can do that through that member sign-in orange box that you'll find on pretty much every ASA page, or at the very top where it just says to log in. So either one of those you can have access to, and if you don't have a sign-in or don't know, you can always reach out to us, and we're happy to help you get signed in so you can have access to those resources. So where to go? The very first thing is, of course, our education tab. At the, you scroll down and you see that employee development tab. You're going to want to click on that, and it's going to take you to our employee development page. Here you're going to find a bunch of resources. This is just the top of the page that you're seeing here. And in there, you're going to see the new employee roadmap for success. So for employee orientation, we actually have a program and a page that will give you all kinds of advice on what you can do with your new hire and retain them, keep them, all of that good stuff. So you see on the left side of that page all different things on good advice for what you can do to keep them, what you should try to do at the beginning, all stuff that you saw in those best practices, and some more. On the right-hand side there, you're seeing the key areas to focus as you scroll down that page. That's what you're going to see at the bottom. And all of these are documents that are provided free to you that you can use. So the participants, presentation ideas, implementation, evaluations, as Doug was talking about, but program materials as well. So, you know, your pre-employment, getting ready for them, as well as just that performance evaluation at the end. So we have evaluations from beginning to end available that you can make yours and make it be what, you know, works best for your company. So once you see this employee orientation program page, we have back on the employee development resources, the new hire onboarding It's essentially an onboarding checklist. So you're going to click on that for download the guide, and it's going to take you to our onboarding roadmap. So this is actually created by industry experts, people in the industry who have gone through this, some of those best practices that you just saw that they found works best for them as well as other companies, and that they feel has really helped keep employees in the industry. So you have from day one, actually you have from before day one all the way up through 6 months in the industry in this checklist. So you can go through, see what will work for you, see what won't, and make it your company's checklist to at least begin looking at program ideas. So when we go back, we actually have our other resources, and this is actually at the beginning of that employee development page. We don't have just things for employee development and recruitment. As you can see, you have recruit and retain. The job descriptions, as Doug mentioned, is a huge portion of both onboarding your employee and retaining them. The mentoring handbook that Doug mentioned is on this page as well. You can click on that and have access to great ideas for the mentors as well as the mentoree. Your evaluations are on here, webinars, and our course catalog. So all of these are available to you for free at ASA University, as well as many more things that we have available and would be happy to talk to you about if you're looking for something. If you don't see something, let us know. We're happy to try to make anything available for you that your company needs. And so we're going to finish up here. Thank you guys for participating in today's webinar. And Maria, over to you.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you, Doug, for an excellent presentation. Thank you to all our participants as well. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded for replay, and you will receive a follow-up email message with notification as to when the replay is available, as well as instructions on how to access it. We are currently working on future programs for the ASA Peer Networking Councils, so stay up to date with these programs along with others for ASA on our networking bar and then industry calendar. Now we do want to open it up for questions at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a few seconds. You can go ahead and type the questions into that bar as we discussed at the beginning of the program. So we will pause for a moment. All right, so we have a question. The question is, Amber and Doug, some people don't like to help onboard a new employee. They prefer just to do their own job. How do you convince someone to be a part of it?
I'll start that one. That's a good question because as we find that there's not everyone is going to be a good mentor or a good person that you want a new person to shadow. I like a couple of the best practices that we've seen in this. Number one is to encourage people to have a training session for these. To make sure that you know what it is, you set the expectation, and let those people know that these are the expectations. And if you can do that, great. Then you can be a mentor. And if that's not possible, then okay, we'll find someone else that can do that. If you need someone who is not all that interested in doing it, but they are the resident expert, then you can certainly tie things as another of the best practices shared with us to either tie compensation to that. Maybe the person could qualify for, you know, an extra 50 cents an hour or a pay bump if they would also add value as a mentor, or tie potential advancement to a requirement that they are going to be in a mentor. So if you want to move up or move to this position, mentors are a great training ground to be able to see if someone can be a good people manager before you actually promote them. So those are some ideas, and just I'm just recycling ideas from the best practices that we've seen, but sometimes those are effective ways of helping someone see how the tribal wisdom that they have in their job, that the company really needs them to be able to share that with new people.
All right, we also have another question. I need to convince my owner to put a higher value on onboarding. How do I do this?
Well, I think it's important to, I think we're all starting now to do a better job of quantifying what employee turnover is costing our organizations. It is awful how much someone leaving for a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things really costs our organization. And I think starting with that with an owner, the owner's understanding of the balance sheet, understanding of what the true cost is of turnover, and the importance of bringing newer people on board, especially with all of the research that ASA has shared with us about the incoming or the upcoming retirements of nearly 50% of our workforce in less than 7 years. Understanding or helping them see the importance of bringing on new people and getting those people up to speed as quickly as possible is a great place to start, especially when it comes to what that means with the bottom line and how we can tie some of our talent strategy to the strategic plan. So those are some suggestions that I would have. And look at any major company, even outside of our industry, that has major goals. I'll be willing to bet that there's some goal around people or talent. Many of your own goals have that as corporate objectives. You have, something around sales, something around margins, something around inventory, and probably you have something around people. And because it is becoming so much more of a focus for organizations. So tie back to some corporate goals that you have and show how the onboarding process can assist with some of that. Those would be my suggestions of convincing an owner to be able to help with that.
And some of those ways to help with that in convincing them, we also, those resources that you just, we went through have the importance of onboarding and everything in there that you can maybe use to convince your manager to hopefully get more into this process.
Okay, next question. If our company doesn't do anything, anything's all in caps, so we know this is stressed. If our company doesn't do anything for onboarding, where is the best place to start?
That's a good question. My suggestion of where to start is to pick apart some of the resources on the ASA website that Amber showed. They're all available free of charge to members. You can download them. Take a look at some of those and start small. Maybe you have one new hire that you've got coming on board in the next couple of weeks. Just focus on being prepared and putting together a plan. Work with the hiring manager and be planful for that one person and see how it works. Get some feedback from that person after they've worked through all of the different pieces in the onboarding process that you started. Start small. And start with one person and let the organization start to see some of the success that is garnered once you have a committed full court press for that one person. Line up a couple of the shadowing mentors and make sure that you're all on the same page and build the expectations from some of the documents that Amber showed you about the manager does this, the mentor does this, HR does this, the new hire does this, and have everyone be on the same page. But just start with one and then identify where you can take it from there and start building it from that. That would be my suggestion on where to start. Amber, do you have any other thoughts on where someone could start?
I would agree. I would say looking over all of those documents to be sure what would work best for your company, and taking it from that point.
All right. We have one last question. Amber and Doug, thank you for the great presentation today. How do I incorporate some of these ideas into my company's own onboarding process?
Yeah, I think pick and choose a couple of the best practices and see, you may have some of your own best practices that go above and beyond this. Keep doing what seems to work for you and just pick one or two of these and figure out how you might incorporate it into your own. Figure out, just one thing and try it in there and document something. Just pick something small. Maybe it's the break bread piece, or maybe it's the attaboy that you ask your owner or your president to be able to send. Just pick a couple of things and keep tweaking your process. Keep making it better.
Okay, that concludes the questions that have come in at this time. Thank you again to Amber and Doug. Thank you to our participants. Also, just a plug here, Network 2017 will be held in Nashville this year, and in the next couple of weeks, leading into the first weeks of March, you will be seeing more information popping up in your mailboxes in regards to that. So thank you all for this great program today. I am Maria Marchese with ASA, and this webinar is now concluded.